Hello, welcome back to the Neighborhood Conversations, where we have inclusive conversations inviting inclusive people talking about diverse topics. Today, on today's episode, we're going to be highlighting the Acadian Day that's coming up. I have the amazing Nancy Hayes, who's the manager of Friend Services at the YMCA. Nancy, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you to having me. And how are you?
I'm pretty good. It's a beautiful day, actually cloudy but sunny in the beautiful Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Where are you residing, Nancy, today?
I'm at home. I'm on vacation, so I'm in Lower Sackville.
Nice, 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 nice. Oh, I'm actually maybe close by. I'm actually at a library just having this conversation. We're having a site visit. I'm doing my first site visit, so it's always good to fit things in, and it's so good to fit this episode in to welcome you and to talk about this amazing history of Acadian Day. And so I would like to jump right into the conversation by asking, can you share a bit of history of why Acadian Day exists today in Canada?
Well, it's mainly to recognize the historical presence of Acadians, their culture, and the diversity, the specificity of the Acadian. I think most of the people in Nova Scotia knows that we were deported
Mhm.
based on lands and religion. In 1881, actually, that's a long time ago.
Long time ago.
The It was the first National Acadian Convention in Memricook in New Brunswick, and that's where the National Acadian Day was born. So it will be on August 15, and we are celebrating every year. Just our unicity, like we're a little bit different, and there's a bunch of reason for that.
Yes, 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 yes. Totally agree. Nancy, sometimes people try to confuse Acadian and Indigenous and try to confuse both cultures. So, can you describe the relationship that the Acadian people had with the Indigenous people?
Well, I think the confusion came from the fact that a lot of Acadian are a mix of Acadian and Mi'kmaq, because when they
Mm,
deported the Acadians, the one who were able to stay behind survived because of their relationship with the Mi'kmaq people, because they
mm,
learned how to survive the winter. Like they didn't know how to survive winter like we have in Canada. So
yeah.
they learn to use plants for medicine. They learn how to survive winters. They were sheltered by the Mi'kmaq. So for years and years, the relationship between the Mi'kmaq and the Acadian was a relationship based on respect and exchange.
Mm,
In the recent years, it's a little bit more challenging for
right.
different reason, and I don't think that and this is my personal opinion. I don't think it's coming from the Mi'kmaq or the Acadian. I think it's coming from the government laws, like all the laws
Right.
that have been created, like the fishermen's laws and all that. So that separated the two group. But I was reading an article where they were saying that honestly, the relationship between the Acadian and the Mi'kmaq was really, really good until the English came back and conquered the territory,
Mm,
because they were
right.
really acting like they wanted to take over. That it was
Hmm,
a
hmm.
different approach that how the relationship between the Acadian and the Mi'kmaq was based on. The relationship between Mi'kmaq and Acadian was based on, like I said, it's just like they were teaching us stuff, but we
Yeah.
also brought some plans from France, and we were teaching them how to use them. So it was really just a shared of knowledge. So it was a great relationship, and because a lot of babies came from those mixed
Yeah.
culture, I think that's where the
Definitely.
confusion is
Yes.
coming from. Yeah.
And we have to be educated continuously, and that's important for sure. And like you said, because of the laws that's being created, it caused a bit of that. Speaking about the land in different territories, what are some of the Acadian communities in Nova Scotia that you are aware of?
Well, that's a good question because we have different region, and some
Mm-hmm.
region are what we call the original Acadian region. So
Mm-hmm.
originally we had five main Acadian communities, if we can call them like that. So Cheticamp, and it's still one, Clar and Argyle, where you have University Sainte Anne, Pumpket, and L'Île Madame. So those are the five first Acadian region. Pumpket is unfortunately losing a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
their average year of population is really high. So unfortunately, it's one of the region that they're losing a lot of their youth. But
Oh, wow.
the impact of that and the impact of people like me coming from Quebec, because I'm Acadian, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't born and raised in Nova Scotia.
Right.
It's that we brought the Acadian history and our roots with us, and
Right.
we created six new what we call emerging Acadian region. So
Right.
in those emerging regions, you have Halifax. Halifax is now the biggest community of French Acadian. And you
Mm-hmm.
also have Annapolis Valley. You also have Sydney and
Mm-hmm.
Truro, South Shore, and Chesapeake. So all those communities now have French school. And it's funny because if you have a French school, you have a French community.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
easy. And we have
Yeah.
22, I think it's 22 or 23. I'm sorry, they're adding school every year, so I lost count. But we have
Definitely.
22 or 23 French school across the
Wow, that's amazing.
province.
Wow.
So everywhere, we have 11 communities altogether. If you look at in the French system, you have only primary and high school. So it
Right.
means that you have two school in every region. So, it's just like, and in Halifax, we have more than that, but it's just like if you have a French school, you have a French community. And
Right.
you have the influence of the Acadian community because this is our root here in Nova Scotia.
Wow, that's really amazing. I didn't know that there was that many French schools, which is really good to have to teach and to educate in those areas. Speaking of the French language, how does Acadian French differ from Quebec French or French from France? And yeah, how does that differ from those other
But
French languages? Yeah.
yeah, but honestly, it's a little bit similar as English. Like the
Okay.
language is influenced by your surroundings. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
take people in France, but they have
Hmm.
no competition. It's French. It's just like, yes, they get influenced by English because that's the international language, but they don't have to fight for their language. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is that the last time I was there, they have Anglicism and they don't even know that they're using English words. Like they have no clue. Like they're just using it and they have no clue. So
Wow.
it's funny because they'll tell you that they're the one with the best French. But it's not true. It's just like they have Anglicism. They're not
Yeah.
aware of them most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you take Quebec, Quebec is it's French, but Montreal, for example, was mainly English. If you look, I don't know if you ever saw the movie about Maurice Richard, the hockey player.
I haven't heard of it
Yeah,
yet.
well, you have
I'll
to
have to
look at
watch.
that, but that will give
Yeah.
you an idea how Anglophone or English Montreal was in the 50s and the 60s. So the Quebec had to fight to maintain their French. So that's why they
Mhm.
create laws that sometimes
Yeah.
go too far, but the main goal was to protect the language, make sure that French people and French language was surviving. So when you look at the
Uh,
Acadian, it's a different
right.
story. Like the Acadian, they were mainly like Nova Scotia was French at one point. If you go to
Hmm.
Louisbourg, you'll learn that, Louisbourg was built by French. So French was the main language in Nova Scotia for many, many years. But we forget about it because we were conquered by Anglophone and they took over everything and become like the main language of the province. But
Yeah.
Nova Scotia was built by a French Acadian. There are a lot of land that we are still cultivating. There, you're able to cultivate it because the French built the aboiteau. That was a system to use a piece of land that weren't really made for to grow, and they made it possible to grow, different type of things, like mainly carrots, potatoes, onions, the easy vegetable that you can put in a cave and keep for like year round. But yeah, Nova Scotia was French. But
Oh wow, I did not know that. I'm learning history today, and see, this is why it's important to have conversations like this. To learn more and to hear that. Wow, that's amazing.
yeah.
That's amazing. Did not know that at all.
I look forward to my family's security in the future. That's the main goal as a father.
The empowerment from changing careers has really just made me want to get out of bed in the morning.
I'm looking forward to growing my business. So I want to hire people like I was hired. I want to give guys that chance.
Il me fera plaisir de continuer à travailler avec les immigrants francophones en Nouvelle-Écosse.
I am looking forward to the financial freedom that I never had before.
So to answer your question about language, what happened to the
Yeah.
Acadian is that when they came back, they were a minority, and it wasn't really a good thing for you to identify yourself as a French Acadian. So
Right.
at the time we didn't have French school anymore. We were kind of integrated in the English system, and in a way to survive, because you know what it is to be a minority. You do what you have to do to survive. So a lot of families
Indeed.
decided, okay, it's not a good thing to be a French Acadian, so I'm not going to teach French to my kids. So that's why you have generations of people who have French family names who don't speak French at all anymore. And that's why
Right.
we have those emerging communities. Like they realize, oh, French is a good thing. I should be proud. I should fight for my language. But a lot of Acadian are told that their French is not good. And it's not true. That the reason why people perceive Acadian French as not good French, it's for a different reason, but mainly it's because they speak Old French. Because when they came back, they were isolated in English communities, so they weren't influenced by all the new vocabulary that the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s created, because they weren't immersion French. So what happened is that they speak Old French. A bunch of vocabulary didn't exist in their Old French, and they weren't exposed to them. So they started to use English words because that was the only word they knew to explain everything that was created in the industrial period. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s. It's just like that the world bloomed completely.
Right.
But they weren't in French communities. How do you expect them to know the word in French if they weren't exposed to it?
Yeah. So true.
And until the 70s, we had French school at one point, but those French school had French-speaking teachers using English books to teach. So that's the other reality of the Acadian community. If you talk to an older Acadian, they feel much more comfortable to read in English and speak French, because when they were at school, they were using English books. So the history part of why French Acadian have the language they're using is really important, because if you understand that they have a right French, but it's an old French that they mix with English words because they were never exposed to the real word. They weren't in France. They weren't in Quebec. So it's just like they didn't know the word.
Wow.
So that's where, you have the Chiac in New Brunswick. It's a mix of English and French, but it's really like you can explain it. It's just like, so I worked a lot with Acadian. I started my career actually as a French as second language teacher for University Sainte Anne. And every time that I was asked to evaluate an Acadian, I wasn't welcome because, people were saying, well, yeah, you'll tell me that I don't speak French, but I'm a French Acadian. And I said, I will never judge your French. Like my French from Quebec is not perfect. The French from France is not perfect, even though they think they are. Nobody is perfect. It's just like this. It's just like, it's, so it's really fascinating when you look at why the language is the way it is. It's just like there's a backstory to that reality that people don't know.
Wow. And that's history. Wow, folks. Get your history together, folks. And I feel like that wow, I'm very, I will have to bring you back on to share more later on in a different conversation. But I'm all about the food. I love food and dishes and taste. And I'm all about that. When I travel to different provinces and different countries, I try to look for dishes. So can you share the taste of Acadian dishes that you personally made? And is it easy to make?
Honestly, the traditional Acadian food are not easy to make.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so I don't cook them, but I eat them. I really enjoy them. But my favorite will be what we'll call in English rappy pie, or râpeur in French. That's my favorite. But only to cook it, it's 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And you didn't do it because you have to mix your potatoes with 20 to 22 liters of chicken broth before you put it in the oven. So you're talking about hours and hours to prepare that precious rappy pie. I know a couple families who are doing it, but mainly if you can find a way to buy it already made, it's easier. And personally, I really like the one in Chassacook. Chassacook, La Cuisine à Brigitte, she is selling, that rappy pie. It's a frozen rappy pie that you just put in the oven. And it's so good. It's much better than the one you buy at the grocery store. But this is my favorite. But if we talked about other traditional, you have the fricot. So fricot is kind of a twist to a chicken soup. And the poutine à trous. So poutine à trous, it's a dessert. So it's kind of a pastry that you'll fill with apple and cinnamon and butter. And you're going to cook that. Mm-hmm. And traditionally, in Acadia, you're going to use the molasses. So they put molasses on everything. They put molasses on the rappy pie. They put molasses on the poutine à trous. So they put molasses on a lot of different things. So it's but none of their food is really easy. Well, the fricot is not too bad, but it traditionally it was long cooking, long preparation time to cook the Acadian food.
Wow, that's yummy. And you will have to send me those recipes because I'm going to try to take on the challenge, but also send me locations that I can pick these recipes, or pick the dishes up already made so that I can try them and also taste the flavor and stuff like that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So to wrap up this conversation, can you share any upcoming events that our audience can attend? Any resources where folks can learn more about the Acadian history?
Well, the Acadian Day is next Monday, so on the 15th. Yes. So you'll have a celebration on Grand Parade with Acadian musicians. Right. So it's at 7:00. Mm-hmm. You can find more information, and let me just look at my notes. You can find more information at www.quinzou, so QUINZOU.com. So that's the site, because what happened is that we have celebration here in Grand Parade, but if you in other region like Shitcam they have celebration. I think Clark and Argyle have some celebration. Louisbourg has some celebration. So it's really celebrated across the province. But if you go to that website, you'll be able to see the different festivities that they offer on that specific day. But in Grand Parade, every year, the mayor will raise the Acadian flag on Acadian Day. So it's kind of special, for all of us. So yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that resource to us and events that's coming up. I'll definitely attend next week, Monday, for sure, to highlight and to learn more about the Acadian Day history. And that's a wrap, folks. We invite different people from different conversations. Nancy, I appreciate you coming on today, sharing about the Acadian Day. How do you say "have a great day" in Acadian French, or is it the same in French?
Bonne journée will be the quickest. So,
Bonne
bonne journée.
journée. Bonne journée, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
This podcast is funded by the Government of Nova Scotia.